Do you want to talk about your mental health? Well, you've come to the right place. I'm your host. You can call me Horse. Why the long face?
Hello, and you're very welcome back to another episode of Why the Long Face. I am, of course, that's actually very hard to say. I'm Horse. See, that's where the word Horse O'Keefe becomes very Irish, because you can't say I am, of course, a horse, but you also can't say I am, of course, horse. See, this is probably the most terrible intro I've had to any podcast, so we're just gonna move on. So I want to talk about the Japanese art of Kintsugi, and I hope I haven't butchered that word. So Kintsugi is the art of, if you have a broken vase or a broken cup or something like that, you take basically lacquer and powdered gold or powdered silver or powdered platinum, and you mix it together and you use that to fix the vase or fix the cup. And the whole point behind it is that it's basically, instead of throwing away something that's broken, you are making the damage part of the history of that vase or of that cup or of that whatever it is. And I think that's fucking beautiful, and I think that's a great way to look at ourselves. You know, so for the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to refer to like mental health, or if someone has mental health or depression or anxiety, or they're going through a tough time. For the purposes of this podcast, I'm referring to the person as broken, just to get my point across and to make this analogy make sense and to make it fit. I by no means mean that anyone who's going through something with their mental health is broken. You're far from it. I'm just using this as a way to try and contextualize it. Okay? Now, also, just a slight disclaimer. I'm not for a second saying if you are outside and you break your arm, I'm not telling you to go get glue and get powdered gold and try and fix your arm that way. That this is an entirely metaphorical, emotional metaphor. Do not try and fix like a broken arm or something like a broken fucking car with glue and powdered gold. That's not going to work. Just a disclaimer. I'm not saying that you will try, but you know, there are people out there who do stupid things, so that's my piece said on that. So I'll be very honest, lads, this is probably one of the first podcasts where I've actually done a bit of research, and the more that I did, the more I kind of really respected and really loved this idea of Kintsugi. It's also kind of similar to another Japanese philosophy of, and again, I hope I don't butcher this either, but it's Wabi Sabi. So it's W-A-B-I and then space and then S-A-B-I. And that is the idea of embracing the flawed or the imperfect. So, for example, it can be anything. It doesn't even have to be massive. Again, if we use a cup as an analogy, you find the cup and it's got a little chip taken out of it. That cup can still do its job. It's just slightly chipped. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't mean that you can't use it anymore, that it's not fit for purpose. So these two things, the Kintsugi and the Wabi Sabi, they have genuinely taken a good strong hold of me now this week, and this is why I wanted to share it and wanted to kind of talk about it in relation to mental health, because it's at the end of the day, these two things are based in philosophy, and it doesn't just have to be about the physical. Like Kintsugi is physically you're fixing something that's broken, but metaphorically and emotionally we can attribute this to mental health. So, for example, you have depression, you've had it for a long time, you have your good days, your bad days, or maybe it happens in periods of weeks or in periods of months. And a lot of people will embrace the good times, yes, but I feel like there's still always that fear in the back of your head that it's going to come back. And if you have that fear, 90% of the time it will come back, because for me, if you constantly fear that it's going to come back, you're still giving it power. You're still giving the mental health the power, whereas you should be thinking, I have the power to make sure it doesn't come back, and if it tries to come back in little drips and drabs, I can control that. But say it like that now, for example, you've had depression for a long time, it's constant up and downs. A lot of people will view themselves as flawed or as broken, but why? Yes, depression and anxiety and all these things at one point have had quite a negative effect on my life and have led me to have some very dark thoughts and have some very dark moments, and that is indisputable. you can't argue that depression does not have major effect on people's lives. But as someone who is quite artistic, having depression and having anxiety has given me some of the most beautiful pieces of artwork that I've ever created, whether that's photography or short movies or songs or anything like that. It has given me a perspective that other people may not have. I would not be able to do what I do, whether it's this podcast or have my TikTok, and come up with these completely random analogies for mental health if I had not gone through what I had gone through. Therefore, I am not broken. I was broken, and through therapy, through writing, through hard work, through grafting, I have improved my mental health tenfold. That hard work, the therapy, the writing, the putting the time in myself, that was the lacquer and the gold powder. That was me making and fixing the cracks as they are, or as they were. So now I am whole again. I'm not broken, but the cracks are still there, but they're filled with this gold, beautiful, shiny, pretty layer now. So like, you look at me or you talk with me, you know that I've gone through my mental health problems in the past. But I have such a positive look on it now. As for looking at it in relation to the Wabi Sabi, people, and I think this is a very big thing, is that one, there's not enough of an understanding out there about mental health. On a day-to-day basis, people who have mental health problems struggle to kind of understand it because there's not enough information out there about it. And people who are seeing either their children or their friends or their parents or their whatever going through it don't understand, again, because there's not enough information about it out there. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I see is that people think that they need to cure themselves or cure their friends or cure their partner or cure whoever of the depression. And cure is the completely wrong word. You don't need to focus on getting rid of the depression. I'm blue in the face from saying it. It's all about the tiny steps. You first have to accept that you have the depression. Then, on a day-by-day basis, start doing the small things to understand your depression or understand your anxiety. There's no point, if you have anxiety, in going from one day of not even being able to get out of the bed to then saying, right, today I'm going to get up, I'm going to go to the shop, I'm going to get my hair cut, I'm going to do all these things, because it's too big of a task. And if you fail any bit of that, you're just going to beat yourself up and give up and say that, oh, I tried, I can't do it. Whereas if you do it in small steps, literally going back to when you wake up, saying, okay, instead of lying in bed for an hour watching TikToks and watching YouTube and not wanting to get up, I'm going to get up within half an hour. And if that is the only thing you do that day, fucking fair play, because it's something that you didn't do yesterday. It's all about the tiniest bits of self-improvement. Treat it like a marathon, not a sprint. Marathons take time and you have to pace yourself. Sprint, fair enough, you can go hell for leather for however many meters and you're done and that's it. But dealing with your mental health and dealing with depression and anxiety is not a sprint. It is more like a marathon. You have to train, you have to take your time and pace yourself. Okay? And then, if you do that for a few weeks or a few days or whatever it is, and eventually you kind of start to understand your depression, you understand your triggers, you understand all of that, that is where the Wabi Sabi has kicked in. Because you're not curing your depression, you're not focusing on getting rid of it, you're embracing it. You're embracing the fact that, in Wabi Sabi terms, that you're flawed or you're imperfect. As in, you have this thing that sometimes controls you for a few days or a few weeks or a few months. You're accepting that you have it, but you're also accepting and embracing the fact that you have it, meaning you understand that you can control it, that it does not control you. And also, in relation to the Kintsugi, the fact that it's done with gold or silver, it means it stands out from the rest of the vase or the rest of the cup. It means that you're not hiding the fact that you've gone through mental health troubles. And I do not care. I don't care who you are. I don't care what age you are. If we are talking, you will have a very, very high chance of understanding that mental health is one of the most important things to me. Talking about mental health is extremely, do you know what? It's probably fundamental to who I am as a person. I don't know what I'm going to do for a job for the rest of my life. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5-10 years time. But I know for a fact I'm still going to be talking about mental health on a daily basis. Because for me, that is the only way that we're going to break down the stigmas. Now, I'm not saying that you all have to go away and have your own mental health podcast and your own TikTok talking about mental health and all that. That's a me thing. But what I am saying is that where the fact that you have depression and the fact that you have anxiety, wear that as a fucking badge of honor. The fact that you are now at a point that you're up and out and about. You know, and this whole, and it's a very Irish thing, and you can probably tell it gets me very fucking angry, this whole thing of, oh, that's for behind closed doors now, I wouldn't be talking about that. It's fucking bullshit. The reason why mental health is so bad in this country, and understanding of mental health is so bad in this country, is because of that attitude that has been around for fucking years, and it's fucking archaic. There's no need for it anymore, and that's what I'm trying to do. Saying it's behind closed doors is making it seem like it's this taboo thing. It's not. It's something that nearly everyone, as far as I'm concerned, will have a depressive moment in their life. Sometimes it might just be a fleeting thing. Sometimes you might suffer with it for quite a long time. And especially since the pandemic, people who have never had mental health problems before are now struggling with their mental health. And that's why we need to talk about it, and that's why I talk about it. And I'm also not. You need to find that balance. I'm also not saying to, like, if you're at work or you're going out to shop and someone is like, oh, well, how are you today? You don't have to be like, oh, I'm depressed. It's trying to find that balance. I realize that I make it sound extremely easy, and it's not. It has taken me a long time to get to a point where I'm comfortable talking about my mental health. Like, for example, I love tattoos. I think tattoos are fucking brilliant. Your body, to me, is like a blank canvas, and you can do with it what you want. And especially for me, my tattoos are quite personal. I don't have anything I would consider generic apart from the clock on my chest. But in my defense, when I got that, I didn't realize that clocks were something that a lot of men my age get as part of their sleeves. And look, that's fine. I've nothing against it. It's your body. Put whatever the fuck you want on it. But apart from that, a lot of my tattoos they're like a story. It's literally, if you didn't know anything about me and we just had a conversation based on my tattoos, you would have a very, very good understanding of who I am as a person. And like, I could be completely wrong. I'm just going off the little bit of research that I've done on Kintsugi. But for me, tattoos are almost like my form of Kintsugi. I can't necessarily put gold on myself. It's not really how it works. But a lot of the times I've gotten tattoos has been because I've gone through a rough patch. I found some sort of a symbol or something that has helped me get through, and then I get that done, and that's me fixing the cracks or putting something in place. To be fair, I actually have a tattoo of a vase on my forearm, and there is cracks in it. Now, the cracks aren't gold, but that's because, one, I wasn't aware of this philosophy, and two, the artist didn't have gold ink, and that's also fine. But the whole reason why I got the vase was I was once with one of my counsellors, and we got on very well, and there was we were able to have banter as well as talking about the mental health, because I think it's very important to feel comfortable with your counsellors. Now, not everyone will have that with their counsellors. I am very, very lucky to have had her as a counsellor. I had her throughout most of college. Just an absolute gem of a woman. I don't want to say I love her, because that might be another reason to go back to counselling. That's a whole other fucking thing. But I have a lot of love in my heart for that woman and everything that she did for me. But anyway, at one point, she described me as an ornate, decorative vase because I'm fragile, but I'm pretty. And she said this after I had broken down in her office and I had tears streaming down my face, and I couldn't help but laugh. And I thought, that's fucking brilliant. I got that as a tattoo. And now, complete other bit of a tangent, but she actually came into the shop that I was working in Limerick at one point, and I happened to have a t-shirt on, and I showed her the tattoo, and she was like, do you know what, I think that is the very first time, and probably the only time that a client of mine has gotten something I have said tattooed on them. And I was like, well, the reason I love it so much is because it didn't seem like something that she had said to everyone. Like, everyone knows these things of, it is what it is, this too shall pass, all these things. They're generic things that a lot of people say to a lot of people. But this thing about the ornate decorative vase, it seemed anyway like it was very, very specific. So like that's the thing, like wear your battle scars, wear the fact that you have had depression and you have fought with your depression. You have fought to be who you are now. You've fought to be in the place that you are now. Wear that with pride. Fucking have that kintsugi. Cover yourself in metaphorical fucking gold. I feel like, and this is what happens with a lot of the analogies I come up with, is they're completely obscure and I take the complete arse way around what I'm supposed to understand from it. And if I have completely misunderstood kintsugi, I very much do apologise. But for me, that's what I have taken from it. And I hope that you can take something from it too. So before I go on a completely random tangent, again, we're going to split it up. And I'm very, very excited to talk about this week. It's Movie of the Week.
I watched the film this week, I ain't gonna talk about it. Movie of the week.
So I actually watched this a few weeks back. I just haven't had an opportunity to talk about it. I was extremely, extremely excited for it to come out. Anyone who knows me or anyone who's followed me for a while will know that I am absolutely obsessed with Power Rangers. I always have been. I loved it as a kid, like the multiple series of it. So a few weeks ago, the 30th anniversary of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they did like a special reunion episode. It was called Power Rangers Once and Always, or Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always. Now, 2 of the actors from the original series have passed away, so I was kind of intrigued, I suppose, to see how they tackled it. Firstly, it's as cheesy as the original series was, and as most of the Power Rangers series are. If you're watching this to take in like amazing acting and really kind of well written dialogue, this is not the thing for you. It's not. It's cheesy. Like, unfortunately, most of the actors' acting abilities have not majorly improved over the years. But I loved it. I loved it for that fact. They weren't making it to be like a dark, gritty version. Like, they knew that it was going to be a lot of fans watching it 30 years on. But they didn't change it to suit kind of liking or the needs of that audience now. They made it for the audience who originally watched it at like the ages of fucking 7 or 8 or whatever ages they were. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. They actually killed off one of the Rangers. Now, the actress herself passed away in 2000 or 2001. The Yellow Ranger. She passed away. She was in a car crash. But they had body doubles and they had like lines that she had obviously done at some point. So they put that in over it, and she was killed off by the villain, and that alone was kind of like, oh shit, the Rangers can actually die. It's not something that we had really seen before. Yes, it has happened in other series where like Rangers have died, but they've always kind of come back. And more than anything, I was excited to see the Green Ranger, because Tommy was always my favourite. As for many people, he's kind of like the staple of Power Rangers. He was like probably the guy who was best known for Power Rangers. But obviously he had unfortunately passed away a few months ago, so I wasn't entirely sure what they were going to do with him. Now again, unfortunately, it was just a body double and lines that he had recorded, and there was like a plot device within the episode or in the movie or whatever that he didn't really have to be in it, kind of a thing. So I kind of focused on other Rangers kind of coming back, and there was a lot of little Easter eggs and a lot of kind of cameos and all this kind of thing, and it really kind of opened up opportunities for like a wider Power Rangers universe kind of thing. Like I would genuinely love it if they kept this going, if this became like a new series, but they still kept it as cheesy as it is. Like, I've always thought that like a dark, gritty Power Rangers would be kind of cool, but this was not it, and that's fine. They didn't try and change it. Like I said, they kept it as what it was, an original reunion episode. It's cheesy as fuck. Like, the costumes are still awful, especially for like the kind of like the villains' henchmen. I can't remember their names now, and that's gonna fucking annoy me. But like, the costumes are still literally just a mask and like basically a shitty grey morph suit. But it's just like, I couldn't help but smile for the entire thing. It was, nostalgia is such an underrated emotion or an underrated feeling, and that was just nostalgia in an hour. Like, it was an hour long and it was just perfect. And then they did have a lovely tribute at the end to the 2 actors from the original series who are no longer with us. So that was the Yellow Ranger, Tu Trang, who, like I said, passed away in a car crash in the early 2000s, and Jason David Frank, who was the Green Ranger. He unfortunately passed away by suicide only a few months ago, and that in itself hit hard. Like, there's been a couple of childhood icons or childhood heroes of mine who have tragically died by suicide, and it hits harder because it's like I looked up to them when I was younger. I thought that they were so cool and they were invincible, whether it was Jason David Frank or Robin Williams or any of these people. And you think that, and especially I suppose for Jason David Frank, you see, and again I understand he's an actor, but at the time you see the actors as their characters. I thought that he was indestructible and he was so cool and he knew what he was about and nothing ever affected him. But obviously shit did affect him, and unfortunately it obviously got too much for him. So that hit fucking hard, and I shed a tear. I shed a tear at the end of the episode. I shed a tear when I found out that he had passed away, and I know that he had absolutely no idea who I was. I'd never met him, but he was a staple part of my childhood, and the fact that he came back in another series. I followed him on Instagram, like I always kept up with all the stuff he was doing, and I would have loved to have gone to some one of the Comic Cons that he would have been at and just got an autograph or just shook his hand or anything. But, you know, unfortunately I can't do that now. But it just shows you that you never know what's going on behind closed doors. You've no idea what's going on in someone's head. So if you're a Power Rangers fan and you haven't watched it, I highly, highly recommend you watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always. It's just pure nostalgia. It's just, you literally will just feel like a child for an hour. And that's something that I think a lot of us kind of miss, is just that unaware happiness and bliss at the fact that all you're doing is sitting down and watching your favourite TV show. And for an hour watching that, I was able to capture that again. So, going back to Kintsugi and Wabi Sabi, I know I use tattoos as an example of Kintsugi that you can possibly kind of relate to yourself. I'm not saying that everyone that has depression has to get a tattoo. They're not necessarily connected. I'm just using for an example for me that my tattoos could be seen as that I'm decorating myself. I particularly have some coloured tattoos, but I'm using the tattoos as a way of repairing, or, you know, if I go through a bad time and I start to feel better, I will generally treat myself with a tattoo. This could be different for you. It could be simply, you know, just getting your ear pierced. It could be buying yourself a new top or a new jacket or a new pair of shoes or anything like that. But it's not about the physical thing. The whole point of me discussing all these things is the philosophical and the metaphorical meaning that they have. It's the embracing the imperfections, and it's the fixing yourself and not seeing them as flaws, seeing them as this beautiful thing that you have. It gives you depression or mental health can give you such a beautiful perspective that other people may not have. Now, whether that's like you're like me and it gives you artistic perspective, where you can create photography or create paintings or create sculptures or anything like that either represent the emotions that you have or the contrast or whatever it is. Or whether it's just that if you go through a depressive time and you come out the other side of it, you generally do see life in a different way. It's another example of how your perspective is changed. I know I start to notice small things that I didn't notice before. And I know I'm not, like, I know some people are mad into nature, and nature is a thing that helps a lot of people with their mental health. For me, that's not it. But for example, you could go for a walk. You might hear the birds. You might notice little things that you've never ever noticed before. Like, for me, it's even if I'm just walking to work and have come out of a depressive state, I notice things around me that I hadn't noticed before, because when I'm in that depressive state and walking around, yes, my head is down, but I'm just zoned out. I'm not concentrating on what's around me. I'm so enveloped in everything that's going on in my head, I don't notice shit. And that can go for, you notice things with your family or your friends or your partner or your child or whatever it is. You notice little things, even your dog, whatever it is. When you're not in that depressive state, your eyes are so open then to everything else that's around you, and you're in a position to actually be able to take it in. But not strictly relevant, but I'm going to say it anyway. With just going back to the tattoos, for me, the tattoos, yes, they fit into this whole philosophy of Kintsugi, but also for me, so yes, tattoos are painful. They're not an easy thing to sit through. But for me, like my depression, my anxiety, whatever it is that I'm going through, when I'm in the midst of that, yes, I can physically feel it. I can feel it in my head. I can feel it in my chest. But I don't really have, there's no pain receptor for depression. There's no way of really physically feeling that pain. Yes, your head can feel busy and you can feel tight in your chest, but what I mean is you can bang your leg off a table. You will feel that pain instantly, and then the pain will go. You'll have that initial, oh you fucker, and then it kind of dies off. But with depression, it's different. It's kind of like a longer lasting pain, but it's emotional. So like you feel it, you feel tired and you feel drained from it, but you don't feel like a physical pain. Well, I don't anyway. And for me, getting those tattoos is kind of a way of, I know the tattoo is because of the pain, is because of the tattoo, but for me that is almost like an emotional release of the pain that I've been feeling over the last few months. And I think that, and through the bit of research that I have done for this episode, I understand now more the idea of kind of self-harming. Now, self-harming is bad, don't get me wrong, it is bad. I used to do it myself, but I think that's kind of where it comes from. So at least now maybe people might have a better understanding of why they did or why they feel like they should self-harm. Yes, physically what you're doing is what's causing you the pain, but you're attributing that to that emotional pain. It's a release of that emotional pain. It's a way of getting that pain out. Self-harming is not the right way of doing it. There are other ways around it, and this kind of goes back to the podcast a few weeks ago. If you want to punch something and feel the pain or feel the anger released or feel that emotion released, punch a pillow, punch a boxing bag, something like that. That is the same thing. It's a way of getting that emotional pain out. Write all your feelings down on a piece of paper and tear the shit out of that paper, or take it outside and burn it, but just be careful. Go outside, off into the forest like I said, and fucking scream your head off. These are all ways of actually releasing the emotional pain. I think sometimes we associate pain with a physical feeling, and if we don't have that physical feeling, then we feel like the pain doesn't go anywhere and it just stays with us. And that's not true. There are still ways of getting the emotional pain out. It's just like anything else, it's taking the time to figure out, one, what's causing the pain, like where is it coming from, and two, what is the best way for you to release that is not going to cause you or others more pain. You see, this is why I love this podcast, and this is why I love that I have this platform. It gives me, one, an opportunity to explore all these things, and two, and it might seem very obvious, like that whole thing about the pain of self-harming coming from the tattoos or all that only came to me as part of researching this. That might have seemed very obvious to other people, but that to me was like a fucking light bulb moment, and I love that, and without this I wouldn't have had that. So that's enough from me. Now it's time to hear from me. It's time for Straight from the Horse's Mouth.
Do you have a question or a topic you want to talk about? Here's your chance, it's straight from the horse's mouth.
So this week I got a message on Instagram, and it's from Paula. She said, "Hey Horse, I love the podcast. I love the episode where you spoke about quotes being an important part of your recovery. And I know you love movies, so I was wondering if there are any movie-related mental health quotes that you use or like. All the best, Paula." Firstly, Paula, that's a fucking brilliant question. Yeah, there's definitely 2 or 3 that I love to use. So there's a few. There's from Star Wars, Yoda says, "Do or do not, there is no try." It's fairly self-explanatory. This whole thing of, I don't know, can I do that? Well, just do it or don't do it. Just it's basically the nicer way, or the Star Wars of saying shit or get off the pot. That has kind of had a lot of an effect on me, just in moments where I'm really doubting myself. I'm like, okay, well, I can do it, or I can just not try it. I just not do it, There's the great one from The Lion King, from Rafiki. He says, "Oh yes, the past can hurt, but the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it." Everything you go through on a daily basis has an effect on you, and you decide what you can do with that. You can either run from it and hide from it and completely ignore it, or you can embrace it and learn from it. Every decision, everything that happens, good or bad, you can still learn from that, but it's up to you whether you learn from it or not. There's a great one and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure from which Was it like a Winnie the Pooh TV show episode, or was it one of the movies, or what it was? But it was definitely in one of the animated Winnie the Pooh various pieces of media. ER says, the nicest thing about the rain is that it always stops eventually. Again, it's just another way of saying this too shall pass, or just keep swimming, or like James said last week, just keep fucking going. Bad times will happen, but they're not going to last forever. You can ride it out, and you'll always will get to the other side. So they're all kind of mental health related. And then I suppose just an extra one. Technically it's not a movie, it's a TV show, Ted Lasso. There's an episode and he's just telling a story. He's playing darts and he's talking about a conversation that he had with his father years ago. And it's a quote from Walt Whitman, but it technically counts for this because it was in a TV show. It says, be curious, not judgmental. And that's just a great way of kind of living your life. If you don't understand something, or you don't understand a life choice or a way that someone decides to live their life, don't be judgmental, be curious. Ask them. Ask the questions. Ask what you don't understand. It's very easy to jump to judgment when you don't understand. But that's just not a very fair way of living life. It's not fair to the people around you. Be curious. It's okay to be curious. It's wrong to be judgmental. So there you go. There's a few. There's probably loads and loads more, but they'd be the main ones for kind of movie and TV quotes that have inspired me or that I try to live my life by. So thanks very much, Paula, for your question. It was a fucking very solid question now. You've really set the bar for listener questions on Straight from the Horse's Mouth. So lads, that's it for this week. Unfortunately, we have no James this week. He's off in the States on holidays. So we have no Jambon's Corner this week, unfortunately. But to be fair to you, you did get a bonus episode last week of entirely Jambon's Corner, so that should tide you over until the next episode. I have a few ideas for a few interviews that I'd like to do, so stay tuned for those in the coming weeks. For the next few weeks, lads, genuinely, honest to God, have a look into Kintsugi and Wabi Sabi. They're just very fascinating ways of looking at life. Plus, if you have something broken at home that you don't want to throw out, you can actually buy Kintsugi kits to like fix up a vase or fix up your favorite cup or fix up any of those things. So, it doesn't just have to be metaphorical. You can actually physically fix something that you have at home that's broken if you feel like it. Or, just go off and get a gold tattoo. It's something I'm genuinely considering if I can figure out how to get a good design of that. So lads, look, embrace the imperfections. Our imperfections are what make us human. Like last week when we were talking about movies and stuff, we mentioned The World's End. And there's a line in that I don't think it was meant to be inspirational, but I always do think about it. It says, it's our basic human right to be fuck-ups. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to be imperfect. It's what makes us human. It's what makes us us. We can learn as much from our fuck-ups as we can from our triumphs. So there you go, lads. Have a think about that. And most importantly, mind yourselves.